Capital in the 21st Century is a book by French economist Thomas Piketty. It focuses on wealth and income inequality in Europe and the United States since the 18th century. The central thesis of the book is that when the rate of return on capital, is greater than the rate of economic growth, G, over the long term, wealth becomes concentrated, leading to social and economic instability. Piketti proposes a global system of progressive wealth taxes to reduce inequality and prevent the majority of wealth from being controlled by a small minority. The book has been widely praised and has sparked significant debate about economic inequality and policy solutions. However, an IMF working paper, The RG Gap and the Transmission of Wealth Inequality by Carlos Góes, 2016, critically examines Thomas Piketty's hypothesis. Should we give credit to this paper?
The RG gap refers to the difference between the rate of return on capital, R, and the economic growth rate, G. This concept is central to Thomas Piketty's analysis in Capital in the 21st Century, 2013, where he argues that when R greater than G, wealth inequality tends to increase over time. R, rate of return on capital. This represents the returns earned from owning capital, such as profits, dividends, interest, rents, and capital gains. It is typically measured as a percentage of wealth. G, economic growth rate. This reflects the rate at which the total economy is expanding, usually measured in terms of GDP growth. RG, the gap when the rate of return on capital, R, is greater than the economic growth rate, G, wealth tends to accumulate faster than income from labor, leading to rising inequality. Wealthy individuals who already own capital benefit disproportionately, while workers relying on wages see relatively slower income growth. Piketti argues that if R consistently exceeds G, then capital owners, the wealthy, see their wealth grow faster than the economy. Labor income, wages and salaries, does not keep up with wealth accumulation. This results in increasing income and wealth inequality over time. The IMF working paper you mentioned investigates whether there is empirical evidence that inequality and capital's share in national income increase as the RG gap widens. However, the study did not find strong empirical support for this claim. This could suggest other factors, such as technology, taxation, labor policies, or global economic forces, may influence inequality more than the RG gap alone. The relationship between RG and inequality might not be as direct or automatic as Piketti suggested. Does a higher RG gap lead to a higher capital share of national income? Does an increasing capital share in national income translate into rising wealth inequality? The paper empirically tests Piketty's claim using historical data and finds that there is no strong evidence supporting a systematic link between the RG gap and rising wealth inequality. If Piketty's model were correct, we would expect the capital share of national income, i.e., income derived from capital versus labor, to increase when RG is high. However, the paper does not find consistent empirical evidence that an increasing RG gap leads to a growing share of capital income. Even when capital income rises, wealth inequality may not necessarily increase. Factors like taxation, institutional settings, and financial regulations play a role. Some economies with high RG gaps do not experience rising inequality, while others with lower gaps do. Piketti assumes that savings and reinvestment of capital income are automatic, but in reality, wealth accumulation depends on policies, market conditions, and individual decisions. The paper suggests that economic forces other than RG, such as labor market dynamics, public policies, and financial market fluctuations, have a significant impact on inequality. Challenges Piketty's main argument: if the RG gap does not directly lead to rising wealth inequality, then his key policy recommendations, such as global wealth taxes, might need reassessment. Suggests alternative explanations for inequality. Inequality could be driven by factors such as technological change, globalization, financialization, or labor market policies rather than just the RG gap. Policymakers need to consider other solutions. Instead of focusing only on capital taxation, policies should address broader issues like labor markets, education, and social mobility.
So the IMF paper does not entirely disprove Piketty's concerns about inequality, but rather questions the extent to which the RG gap is the primary driver. It suggests that inequality is more complex and depends on multiple factors beyond just the returns on capital exceeding economic growth. What alternative explanations can also help explain rising inequality?
1. Technological change and automation. How it drives inequality. Advances in technology disproportionately benefit high-skilled workers and capital owners, while displacing low-skilled labor. Example: AI, robotics, and automation have reduced demand for routine jobs while increasing wages for those with specialized skills, e.g., software engineers. Impact: rising wage inequality and a growing gap between capital and labor income. 2. Globalization and trade liberalization. Globalization increases competition, leading to job outsourcing and wage suppression in certain industries. Example: manufacturing jobs moving from developed countries to lower-wage economies, e.g., China, Vietnam, reduces income for workers in advanced economies. Impact: wage stagnation for low- and middle-income workers while capital owners and high-skilled workers benefit. 3. Financialization of the economy. Financial markets play an increasing role in wealth accumulation, favoring those with capital. Example: the rise of stock buybacks and speculative investments benefits shareholders and executives but does not necessarily translate into higher wages for workers. Impact: financial assets grow faster than labor incomes, leading to greater wealth concentration. 4. Declining labor union power. Unions historically helped negotiate higher wages and benefits for workers, but their decline has weakened collective bargaining power. Example: in the US, union membership has fallen significantly since the 1980s, correlating with wage stagnation for middle-class workers. Impact: wage suppression and a larger share of income going to capital owners. 5. Tax policies favoring capital over labor. Many tax systems favor capital gains, which mostly benefit the wealthy, over wages, which are the primary income source for most people. Example: in the US, capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than earned income, allowing wealthy investors to accumulate wealth at a lower tax burden. Impact: wealth inequality grows as the rich pay proportionally less in taxes than workers. 6. Real estate and housing market dynamics. Rising real estate prices benefit property owners while making homeownership harder for lower-income groups. Example: urban housing markets, e.g., San Francisco, London, have seen skyrocketing prices, increasing wealth for property owners while forcing renters into long-term housing insecurity. Impact: wealth is increasingly concentrated among those who already own assets. 7. Inheritance and intergenerational wealth transfers. Wealth is passed down through generations, making it harder for those born without wealth to catch up. Example: a person born into a wealthy family has access to better education, investment opportunities, and social networks. Impact: economic mobility declines, and wealth concentration increases over time. 8. Educational disparities and skill gaps. Access to quality education determines income potential, and disparities in education create long-term wealth gaps. Example: higher education costs in the US limit access for lower-income families, leading to fewer high-paying job opportunities. Impact: lower social mobility and increasing wage gaps. 9. Government policy and social safety nets. Weak welfare programs and deregulation can exacerbate inequality. Example: Scandinavian countries with strong social safety nets have lower inequality, while countries with fewer redistributive policies see greater wealth concentration. Impact: the level of government intervention affects income and wealth distribution. While Piketty's G-gap argument highlights the role of capital accumulation in rising inequality, these alternative explanations show that inequality is influenced by multiple economic, political, and technological factors.